The Premier League season is well and truly underway. We are just 2 game weeks in already. And today we are going to be discussing the winners and the losers so far. Roll the intro. Hello and welcome back to the Lost in Possession podcast. If you're here for the first time, do us a very quick favour and hit that subscribe button. It is free and takes 2 seconds. In today's episode, we obviously didn't do a week 1 preview of the Premier League season, so we're giving you a double header today. We are going to be discussing so far who are the winners, who are the losers on the brand new starts of the season. Who do we think is a surprise? Who do we think is underwhelmed already? And ultimately, do we basically want to delete all our predictions for the season already? So let's get started. Obviously, top of the table, I mean, we're not getting carried away. Maybe Brighton fans will. Top of the table is, of course, Brighton. I guess we've got to say they're a winner so far. Making money.
Absolutely.
Winning points. Jamie, how well, I guess, have they done so far and how much have they impressed you?
So, really, if you're looking at the fixtures, so many people, if you're looking FPL reasons, you were targeting Brighton players because of their fixtures they had. Obviously, they're the sort of dream scenario of Luton at home, first game of the season. Then they've got Wolves away. Wolves, as we've seen, can barely score a goal. So it's not in. However, the manner of the victories are what's surprising. So Luton winning 4-1 on the first day. That's sort of expected, really. But the sort of, was it 4-1 or 5-1 in the end? Sorry, I forgot with the against Wolves. I think it's 4-1.
Yeah, 4-1, both games.
Yeah. 4-1. And yeah, that's a great result away to Wolves. Wolves are better defensively than going forward. So to score 4 against them, especially away, is very good. So you have to be saying they're winners at the moment, especially.
Now, one thing I was going to say is, Jamie, well, I jokingly mentioned we're going to cancel all our predictions already. I remember you saying Brighton might struggle up front, and they've gone and bloody
Much
scored.
scoring, I said this, yeah. Yeah, not a great call from me so far. Like I say, the Luton one, you can expect that. The Wolves one is where my prediction goes out the water, kind of thing. But can they keep it up? Because they actually outperformed their XG against Wolves, which is just incredible that Brighton never seem to have done. So maybe they can't keep that up, and maybe my prediction might come true. But at the moment, I'm holding it out.
Reece, what about yourself? Who's impressed you? Obviously, Brighton are the obvious one. Who else?
Yeah, Brighton deserve credit. I still think yes, they can score, but they're prone to conceding. So, yeah, they need to be careful there. Obviously, you have to look at second place with City, 2 wins from 2, played Newcastle at home and beat them. It was only a 1-0, but they look very good. This is the team that looked very thin on the ground, for a few weeks, and they're not showing any form of weakness still. And they also went away to Burnley in the first game and absolutely beat them comfortably when most teams probably would have crumbled in that first game. So the old, the Man City that we all know, and some of us love, some of us don't, shows no signs of going. So they're quite clearly the team to beat. And I think you have to look in third place and say Brentford as well. Deserve a mention, without Ivan Toney, their star man. They got a decent 2-2 draw at home against Spurs. And then went and absolutely beat local rivals Fulham. Was it 3-0, if I'm not mistaken? So, yeah, it's a comfortable result there. They always seem to be the sort of team when you think actually they're going to lose this one, they actually prove us all wrong. So their mentality is outstanding. And yeah, these are the 3 teams setting the pace so far.
Yeah, agreed. And I think I'd just touch on the City as well. I think given everything, 2 clean sheets in 2, relatively tough games. They've had the Super Cup in the middle of that as well. Jamie, I know you've criticised sort of the lack of signings. Obviously, that's changed today, getting Doku in. But I think the it's one of those where if City had dropped points, everyone would start going, "Oh my God, they're going to not win the title, etc., etc." So you've sort of done well despite the problems that have come your way. You've sort of and KDB injured as well. We got to touch on. So I think despite the negatives, you've done well actually to get two hard fought victories. And Brentford,
yeah, definitely
unbelievable. Just doesn't matter what happens to them; they just find a way. And you've got to give Frank credit as well, to be honest. What about let's just move down the table. Obviously, we won't individually touch on every team. You've got Liverpool, who a bit of a weird one, bit of adversity in Bournemouth. How do we think they're getting on so far?
I think personally,
actually not very well.
no, okay.
Well, you're going to disagree.
Sorry,
Here we go. Our
jump
first
in,
debate.
doing that well. If you watched them, obviously first game of season away to Chelsea, okay, results wise, a draw's fine. But I thought Chelsea were definitely the better team, and they just didn't make it count. And really, I think Liverpool should be sitting here with a win against Bournemouth and a loss against Chelsea. I don't think they've looked that fluid either. Like I said, the performance against Chelsea I thought was okay for, I think, 25 minutes, 30 minutes against Chelsea, but the rest wasn't. Bournemouth, they conceded 2 in 2 minutes. One of them was obviously offside, but it's of the game. They're conceding 2 to Bournemouth when everyone's, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are thinking, could it be another 9-0? You're thinking Liverpool are going to batter Bournemouth, and they didn't. Then they got there, but it wasn't that convincing. And I think Liverpool fans are slightly worried with the signings. Obviously, not getting Caicedo or Lavia, which Jordan, you'll be very happy to hear, weren't you? So it's more of a. I think there's a concern at Liverpool, but results-wise, they've got away with it so far.
Reece, give us the counterpoint to that, I guess.
I disagree. I think they've done just fine. If you would have offered them 4 points, they would have taken that. To go to Chelsea, who the team are revitalised under an attacking-minded coach. Under Pochettino, so many, he conquered so many big boys. This was an easy banana skin for them. They came out of a draw. They played quite well. And then I think we discredit Bournemouth a little bit here. They're a much better side than the one that was last year. They've got a better manager. They've got some good players in there. Yes, they took the lead, and Liverpool come round. We can't expect them to beat them 9-0 again. And they've got a convincing win. They didn't look like they were struggling when they went behind either. They pushed on and got it. So they've got a decent win there. Their first real test is going to be Newcastle on Saturday. That's probably where you might get an indicator of where we're at.
Yeah, I think with just I know we're talking about teams, but a shout out to Semenyo at Bournemouth. I think he really, really caused that Liverpool defence problems all game. And to do that, away at Anfield is obviously no easy feat. So I think he could be one to watch this season that obviously not many people would have sort of backed before the season. Moving down the table, obviously in fifth place. Again, we're not going to get too carried away with league positions, but Tottenham. Now, new manager, lost Harry Kane, and they go and put in. It wasn't overwhelming. I think everyone was getting a little bit carried away, but this is a great home win. 2-0 to Man United, and they made United not look great at all. How do you guys think Spurs are going to get on?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think United didn't look great. They didn't play great themselves. Spurs were brilliant. I'm a big fan of Postecoglou. Oh, Ange, I'll just call him to make it easier. And I knew that they'd be fine without Harry Kane, and they're proving it already. They got a good draw at Brentford. One of the worst starts you could ask for is away to Brentford on the opening game. They passed that test with a decent draw, coming back from behind twice, and then went and beat Spurs convincingly. There's going to be moments, they're going to have probably a lot of 3-2s, maybe a few 4-3s, and there's going to be some teething issues while they get used to the system, but they've got some great players, great manager there who seems to just get it. I think they're building something there already, but again, would they have taken 4 points at the start of the season? Absolutely. Throughout these two, absolutely. But of course, they need to make sure that they build on what they've got already and don't go and lose a few silly games. They've got some decent games to come up. That could be in the they've got Bournemouth away next. That could again going to be the test of what we expect to see from them.
Yeah, I think Spurs have done pretty well as well. I've actually been quite impressed, and I think Spurs fans are like, even if you didn't include the sort of 2-0 win against United, sort of like just the performances, I think Spurs were very. It was a bit like Chelsea, probably not as bad last season because Harry Kane was scoring, but the performances really, if Kane didn't score his 30 goals, Spurs would have been in a similar place to Chelsea. So I think they're being very positive about it due to how they're playing. I think losing Kane will be a blow to them. It's not showing at the moment because they've scored two in both games. Can't really knock that. But I do feel like it's going to come up in a few games where they're going to be knocking on the door where a Harry Kane would have got a goal out of somewhere, and Richarlison's just not showing the goal scoring ability at the moment. I think defensively they keep a clean sheet, but defensively they need to shore up a bit more. But I think that's going to come with time. It's not through. I think with the lack of the players that they've signed are good additions, and I think the manager does get it, what he's trying to achieve. So I feel like he can get Spurs going, but at the moment it's more waiting until it actually properly clicks, and it shouldn't click this quickly. So taking 4 points after the first two games is a very good start, and it's good performances. Whereas I think last season you were saying, Jordan, they had several points, like near max points.
Yeah, I think for me, looking at it tactically again, early days, but the key difference is that sort of midfield pivot of Sarr and Bissouma. Both look good, and like although they've not played much together at all, they look like a good outfit, and they're working well together already. So for Postecoglou, he'll be absolutely buzzing that it looks like already they're working. Both put in impressive performances, and both pretty much ran the game on Saturday. And you've got to bear in mind the midfield that they've done that against. Bruno, Casemiro, Mount, Eriksen. Like, you've got some top level players in there that have dominated in midfield. So good signs early for Spurs. Moving down the table a little bit more, who else? I guess, well, we've got to talk about the next place, which is yeah, well,
Sure you don't want to skip.
Yeah, I was going to skip West Ham. Now, I guess we've got to talk about yesterday. I'll kick things off. West Ham were outplayed in the first half, didn't look great, and yet they beat Chelsea 3-1 with 10 men. Is there signs of life in this West Ham team that many people sort of wrote off already?
Yes, there's life in them. I think it depends on what they do before the transfer window closes. They've started signing players, but it's also very late. They should have been probably doing a bit of the business earlier. I think James Ward-Prowse has shown why he was signed. I think he got 2 assists yesterday. Brilliant corner for the first goal, showing why. I think people thought that was just a good fit for West Ham, and James, that's exactly why. They're signing sort of defenders as well, and I think that's the right move. I think there's life, but I feel like they need a striker. They really need a striker. If they don't get one, I might be jinxing it here and taking another L, but I think they're not going to score as many as what they'd need. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're better than a lot of teams in this league. I don't see them pushing for European places, but I don't see them get relegated. And after losing your main man, it's not going to be a bad season for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what's interesting as well is, well, ironically, I do agree with you about the fact they need a striker, but Antonio would have sort of, hushed those rumours after his performance yesterday, or his goal, I should say. The performance wasn't amazing, but the goal he scored was really, really good. Bodied, held off the ball, nice finish. So maybe he heard the rumours of West
But
Ham going.
it's consistency with
Yeah,
him.
of course.
He'll go and do that, and then he won't score for like the next 7, and it's just like that. That's just not enough. I know he thinks he can score 30 goals for City, but he can't, and he won't get probably in the league this season with the way he's been consistent. Well, the way he's not been consistent.
Yeah, and I think as well, the rumours are that they're going to try Bowen up front, and those sort of rumours were a bit confirmed yesterday when Antonio came off. Um, Bowen, he's not that big physical guy, but actually there was a glimpse in the game where he got a nice ball, back to goal, controlled it, turned it, beat a player. So maybe West Ham fans will be optimistic and say, look, we don't need a striker. Bowen can do it. But personally, I think that's a bit of a stretch. But Reece, where do you stand on West Ham at the minute?
No,
I
Go on,
know.
Jamie.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, all West Ham fans, all I've seen is we want a striker. And that was from the start of the summer.
Yeah, but when has David Moyes ever had a 15-goal a season striker? Really? I mean, come on now. Like, it's just not his strengths. Even when he inherited Van Persie at United, got him 12 goals. So, he doesn't really have that. I think the all-round contribution of the team is what's going to be fine for them. There's a sense of togetherness, the sense of, they've got a bit of flair there. I think they'll use their strengths at set pieces, solid defensively. And I think as long as they can enjoy the Europa League and, even if they stay around mid-table, they'll be happy with that because it could have got a lot worse for them. So, yeah, I'll take that. And of course, they've got to be careful with the Paqueta stuff. If anything does happen to him there, what are they going to do? But early signs are good. And I think, again, if you'd have offered them 4 points at the start, they would have ripped your hand off.
Yeah, no, you're right. And just quickly, I just remembered that all this talk of them needing a striker, Danny Ings they've got, and he was on the bench. And we've said, we've
Yeah, but
praised him in the past.
they still need one with him. They're not convinced by him, and I think it's showing when it was showing at the end of the last season. They still weren't really happy with him, so I think it's still a cause for concern.
Yeah, I think if I was Ings, I'd be looking at a move away. To be completely honest, if they're not going to have faith now, they're not going to have it 5-10 games in. But we'll move on. Obviously, there's a lot of teams in the sort of mid-table sort of region. I'll read off a few. Any of these teams that have sort of impressed you or been underwhelming so far? So we've got obviously Arsenal, Palace are playing tonight. For disclosure, this is filmed, before that game. Then you've got Newcastle, Villa, Forest, Man United, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Chelsea in 15th. Any of those teams that have stood out to you, or any of those teams that have absolutely disappointed you so far?
Before we get onto the disappointment, then I think Villa's an interesting one because obviously they got absolutely thrashed on the first game, but then have gone and made the goal difference back in the second. I think that's a sign of the type of team we're going to get from this season. So I think fair play to them for coming back there. That's good to get that goal difference, even now, instead of having to claw it back throughout the course of the season. Forest seem to be doing all right. But I would say I'd agree. I think after Forest in 11th, I think this is where we're going to get to our losers, to be perfectly honest with you. And it has to start with United. I mean, it takes a while to click. I get it. But come on now, a lackluster performance against Wolves and then, just decide to not turn up against Spurs. It's not good enough at this moment in time, is it? They should be looking at 6 points really, or, or 4. Not just the one win. They've already lost, which is saying they don't want.
Well, that's good. Go on,
Yeah,
Jack.
I think you got to agree with United, haven't you? Like the performance against, yes, they got the win, but the performance against Wolves was terrible. It was no short of terrible. They were so lucky. I think if they played majority of the other teams in this league, they would have lost that and probably lost it 2 or 3-0. I don't. United didn't really offer that much in attack. That was probably the only chance they had was that Varane goal. And if you look at Wolves' chances again and again, they should have won that clearly. And then the penalty decision at the end, there's just no defending from his point of view. There's no defending it. They've come out and apologised, but that does no good. It really does no good, and that's just something obvious. I understand, like I can understand if it's something close where it's sort of like you'll get some fans going, "That's a foul," some going, "That's not a foul." That's just stonewall. So it's just not acceptable. United have got away with it really, and they're lucky to have 3 points at this stage, and that's not the expectation that people United fans were having with this season. And then the game against Spurs, they just look over, and I'm enjoying it for now, but I do feel like they're going to just be a bit of a slow starter, and they'll get into it a bit more. They'll look better, and sort of like in 3 or 4 weeks' time, we'll be like, "Oh, United are doing quite well." I think.
Yeah, I think it's likely that they'll eventually come good, as we've seen under Ten Hag. But you'd definitely be a little bit concerned already as a United fan, I think, because again, we've said it before, and you kind of got the players you wanted to some degree. You know, you needed a goalkeeper. De Gea was past it. You got rid of De Gea. You got Onana, who was, you know, regarded as one of the most sort of exciting keepers in the world. United fans, you know, we jokingly said pre-season was saying he's number 1 in the world. Well, that was quickly disproven. With, you know, again, you needed a midfielder. You got Mount. I got to say on the Mount point, you know, I'm not going to back him anymore because he left us. But you cannot spend 65 million pounds on a player like Mount to then play him CDM. That is not his role. It never has been his role. I don't agree with what Ten Hag's doing. And he looks lost. Now, there's other players in the team, so it's not all about him, but he just looks lost because he's clearly been told not to attack as much as Bruno. And it almost looks like he's been told not to defend as much as Casemiro. And he's just in this weird
But that's
position.
the role. I slightly disagree. I think that's the role he should be playing in that United team. It's a bit like what City have with Rodri and let's say Kevin De Bruyne. Then you have we had Gundogan last year, Kovacic this year in that role. That's what Mount. That's what I think then creates the balance because Mount has that attacking threat and the defensive minded, but maybe too much defensively. But I think that is the role he's got to try and make his own at United. Otherwise, he doesn't fit in because he's not better at attacking than Bruno and creating chances, and he's obviously not better in defending against Casemiro. So I think he's got to have that middle ground. That's the only place I can really see for him, or it's straight on the bench. Really, I think that's the only way he fits in.
Yeah, to be honest, I agree on the point around Bruno and Casemiro, but I don't agree. Like the reference to KDB, like KDB doesn't really defend. Gundogan last season, I'd say was more attacking.
No. So plays more forward. That's the KDB role.
Right.
Then Gundogan does the defensive stuff and the attacking stuff.
Right. Yeah.
He does like the box. That's what I meant.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. At the minute, obviously, it's only 2 games in, new team, but it just looked like he's been trying to play more defensive, and it just doesn't suit him. But yeah, again, they've obviously got Haaland in, or Holland, Haaland, however you want to say it. Definitely not Haaland. So we'll see how he does. But even the likes of Rashford just look lost at the minute. So yeah, early loss for United, I'd say. Now, before we move on to the sort of bottom sides, obviously Chelsea, weird start for us. Obviously in 15th place, 1 point off 2 games, doesn't look great. But we've seen a very encouraging, positive display against Liverpool without a winning goal. And then we've seen half a game of absolute dominance. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, we'd be sitting here going, we've absolutely battered West Ham. If the pen goes in and Chukwuemeka doesn't get injured. But yesterday, the second half, it just took me back. I thought it was last season. It felt like that. We couldn't break a team down. We just looked lethargic. So I don't know where I'm at with Chelsea, to be honest. It's a bit of a weird one. Encouraging signs, but we can't break teams down with 10 men. We're going to struggle. What did you guys make of Chelsea so far?
Teething problems. You can't expect instant success with the turnover of players they've had. I mean, I think it's only Reece James, Chilwell, and Silva are the only 3 left from the Champions League winning team. So we can't really expect much of them there. It's such a quick turnaround, and there's so many players that are trying to get a look in. Poch probably doesn't even know who he wants to start yet. Some players look pretty good. Madueke looked good. I think Modric didn't play too bad. I think, he's just trying to get that balance and trying to find who can fit where. But let's be honest, I would have to argue that of all the teams, especially in the Big Six, Chelsea have had the worst possible start. Like, you wouldn't have wanted Liverpool at home and then West Ham away, right? That's not a nice time, So I think 1 point isn't the worst for where they're at the moment. Poch did also get Spurs off the slow starts at times, remember? So nothing to be worrying about or panicking about. I think it's just one of those things at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to panic about for Chelsea. With how much you've spent, you should be looking for top 4. Really, how much you've spent, you should be actually winning the league. But for how bad you were last season, that's just not realistic. So I feel like you should be aiming for top 4, but it's sort of like, has the season started a bit too quickly? Did Poch want another, I don't know, 2-3 more weeks with the players? Because you have brought in Caicedo and Lavia, but they only came in very, very last week. Like, that's why Caicedo's on the bench. He's going to be starting at 100 odd million, and Lavia probably 2. So I feel like, Poch probably doesn't know his best side. Your signings are just coming in. So I feel like there's still time. There's time to obviously get much better. And I think you've got a nice, I think you've got like a nice 3 or 4 game run that is what's going to benefit you. And I think you're going to be okay, but it's not the greatest of starts results wise.
Yeah, I agree with both your points, to be honest. You're right. You look at the starting lineup, and there's so many new players. Disasi even to come straight in. Colwell's never had a run in the team. There's just so many players that have got a gel. So I agree. Yesterday was awful, but you're right, Jamie. Like, with the run of fixtures, we're more than capable now of hopefully going on a 3-4 game, decent results run and hopefully moving up. And let's move on to the bottom team. So 16th to 20th, you've got Sheffield United, Luton, Burnley, Wolves, Everton. Who are you guys very concerned about this early on?
I mean,
Everton. It's Everton, isn't it? They look terrible. Like, it's schoolboy defending that souls. There's just a problem with every single one of them. I think they're in for a rocky season, and something's got to change. Otherwise, they will get relegated. Plain and simple, really.
I do agree. Getting slapped like that away to Villa is just not good enough, and they were really disappointing first game. Reece, you had Wolves in the relegation. He's sticking with that, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we said about their performance at United, but then they go and play like that against Brighton. And come on now, like, it makes you think: is it just, well, United that bad is what allowed Wolves to look better? They come on now. It's not looking good for them. I feel sorry for them, and they're going to get some wins on the board, but to be, even if you get relegated, you don't want to have 2 losses, immediately. They're already playing catch up, even with Fulham in 13th or Forest in 11th. That may sound silly, but they've already got 3 points on them. So yeah, it's not looking good. Them and Everton, it's been a bleak start.
Yeah, well, there you have it. We won't be too harsh on Burnley and Luton. They've only played one game, both come up, so we'll leave them for a later episode. But as always, that wraps us up for another week's podcast. Let us know your thoughts. Plenty to discuss and debate there. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.